if I'm going to hit the road, what am I going to do? Stay at hotels, stay, with people? And so there's all of these questions that I just didn't have answers to. And I also remember, well, what are my parents going to think? What are my friends going to think? It was all of these external uncertainty and questions. As travel is also evolving now as well too, I think there's a sector that has great potential that's aligned with what we're doing here, and I'd love to explore this more with my team here, with others that are aligned. But a segment of what's we call transformational travel, where you're not just visiting destinations, but you're really using that as a catalyst to really transform and to grow and to evolve and deepen relationships and to enrich ourselves so that we come back a better person, a more energized and more connected and more meaningful life. And I think there's such potential to add another layer of personal growth and development into travel as well. And I think that's aligned with some of the things that it sounds like you're working on too.
It's absolutely aligned. I mean, and I just wrote that down, transformational travel. I don't think I've used those exact words, but I think every time that I travel and the way that I'm choosing to raise my children. So I think you remember we homeschool the
Mm-hmm.
children. And the main reason for that is that, well, one, I didn't want to be that working dad, which is what the family that I come through is also we're Italian immigrants, a few generations back, but they became workaholics again, like probably in that achievement thing, right? To fit in, because we weren't welcome in New York at that time. And when a lot of Italians came, and I was in that same thing, I was repeating this family pattern. And then when I became a father, I was like, wait a minute, this isn't okay. And so part of it was to be with my kids. And because I'm a speaker and teacher and traveling, we've been able to combine all those. And to your point of growth and that transformation, it's absolutely true. Like for my children and for myself, it is a huge transformation. Every time I travel, I come back with better business plans, better business ideas. And all of my business is to help others. So the more that I take care of myself and my own growth, and the more I can help others. And it is, I always tell people they need to take more time off. Part of more business, more life. And we plan to certify companies. And in the next 10 years, we have a big goal of 100,000 companies. And one of the components and requirements is to work no more than 40 hours. In fact, we like to say less than 40 hours to have, and also build revenue, because what are the businesses going to want? They want to grow revenue. And then if they have growth from revenue, they can pay people more, hold on to their employees, provide that better life, and then take more holidays. That's actually part of it. Travel away, like not staycations, like just days off work. We're talking about actually empowering people to travel, because when you do, and this is where it would be great to come back to I'm sure there's so many things you've learned, but when you leave home, and even just the story you just told, you just said you were like in Canada, so not too far from home, but just the fact that you left and giving that space, I guarantee if you were just having like a regular coaching call after a day's work, you wouldn't have had this same contemplation. So it is that a way that allows us to do something dramatically different, changing our environment, focus on that to create some sort of change inside of ourselves at a more rapid pace. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's the environment impacts not only the way that we think, but also how we feel, and how we feel then activates our creativity and all these other possibilities. So it's getting out of that box physically and mentally.
And speaking of that, getting out of the box. So, okay. So I'm going to go back to the story now. So
Mhm.
you're back there, you have 3 months to make this decision. It sounds like pretty quickly, like I think you said within a matter of a week or two, you made the decision to just not renew the lease. So then if we slow down time even more, because I like to do this so that we all have that moment of fear popping up and all these things, and cause us not to make this decision. So what was going on for the Yasmin, if you go back to that time and you're making that decision? I know that after that, everything started to flow your way, but before you open that portal, let's say, or whatever that was, what was going on for you to make that decision possible? Just curious.
Oh man. I know that the biggest concern was, how am I going to make a living? Because up until that point, a lot of my business was doing video production and also consulting and a lot of things that were local there in Portland. And so how am I going to make, money? How am I going to live? Which, the survival piece. But then beyond that, where am I going to live? If I'm going to hit the road, what am I going to do? Stay at hotels, stay, with people. And so there's all of these questions that I just didn't have answers to. And I also remember, well, what are my parents going to think? What are my friends going to think? It was all of these external uncertainty and questions. And I remember continuing my practice of going out to the coast, because that was my getting away to think, to connect with nature, and to, in some ways, in a spiritual way, download some answers through meditation. And it just started to shift for me in a way that I started to reflect on times in my lives where things just worked out, where believing that it's going to be okay, releasing the attachment to exactly how it has to happen, it's always worked out. So then I started to ask myself, well, how is this any different? I packed up my car, drove across the country 15 years ago, not knowing how I was going to make it in Portland, Oregon, just because by visiting there, my friend for a week. And here I am 15 years later with all these accomplishments and all these connections and all that. I did it before. How is this any different from that? And by reflecting on those previous successes, it gave me enough courage to just sign that piece of paper, turn it into the leasing office and saying, look, I'm not going to renew, and it's going to work out. I don't know how, but it's going to work out.
It's so amazing reflecting on as I'm listening. I believe this too. I think sometimes in our younger years, we take on a little bit more risk. And as we get older, and not like, it doesn't have to be like an old man, old woman thing. Like it's, just even like 10 years, or like you said, 15 years later, we were in this comfort. And I find this a lot with my clients and even in myself. And before I rapidly started my growth plan, the process that I went through, you start to forget all the things that you've done in the past, and even the way that we learn, like I find that, as we get really good at something, or we become an expert in something, that when you go to learn that next new thing, we're like, oh, I can't do that, or I'm not good at it. And we forget how many years it took us to become the expert that we are. And, it's like we all crawled before we walked, and, it's we can learn and we can continue to learn. So it's interesting how we put ourselves in that position that you had. And in your case, there's no metaphor about it. You literally packed all your stuff up and traveled all the way across the United States. And then here you are making the plan to travel again, like literally, and then saying, wait a minute, I did this before. Why can't I do it now?
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah. And, if you've ever used binoculars before, where you kind of zoom out, and when you zoom out, you like, oh, it's actually clear now. I think that zooming out piece was really looking at the last 15 plus years has actually been training me, getting me ready for this journey. All the relationships that I built, that I got a chance to reconnect with people as I traveled, all the knowledge and skills that I've developed, all these things that I've done, it's zooming out and seeing the bigger picture, that it's not just in this one moment where I have to make this decision, but it was in the bigger scheme of things, this is just the next logical step.
Hey there, I want to give you something really big. It's called Clear Path to Customers. It's the way that we get the right language to get the right client. I like to call them your wow clients, so that you can have more results, more revenue, more raving fans, and more referrals. And I want to give this to you absolutely free. And all you have to do is go to stevenapolitan.com to check it out, or you can look at the description here. We'll put the details there. As always, remember, choose gratitude and create freedom.